All right, Cabrina, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. So we were just kind of just talking there beforehand. Um, Teaching grade 4 special education. I guess kind of like walk me through the experience of like the needs, how the needs have changed recently, and kind of like what it is that you kind of try to focus on specifically with them.
Okay, so I'll kind of give you a snapshot of
Mhm,
pre-COVID and then post-COVID.
mhm,
So
mhm.
pre-COVID, a little bit about what I do is I'm not a self-contained program teacher. I'm a cross-category teacher. So I teach all different disabilities, but on the higher functioning end where
Mhm.
they come to me for specialized instruction like reading or writing. And then I collaborate with a co-teacher and push into that model in a general education setting. Um,
Okay, so what is a self-contained teacher? Is that just like in a regular classroom? Would that be like the
Yeah. So a self-contained teacher would be
okay?
someone that has a number of students that are with them. So that's a lot of the emotional disabilities that are
Okay.
more so in the classroom with their own program teacher. And then you also have where like the autism programs that a lot of our students that are nonverbal are in these programs too. So those
Mhm.
teachers kind of are in their own classroom all day where
Okay.
the goal is always to get the students into a general education setting in some capacity. But I kind of have the best of
Mhm.
both worlds. So I can be that self-contained teacher for specialized instruction, but I also am in the general education setting. So I
Okay.
thought that's kind of I started doing that. That was kind of like the dynamic pre-COVID. Then
Okay.
post-COVID, the needs kind of shifted. So it was
Mhm.
no secret that, especially in the elementary model of teaching, you know, the regression was at an all time high because you have kindergartners that are being requested to be online virtually. And I mean, that was a lot for the teachers, a lot for the parents.
And my
And if
wife
you
taught preschool and kindergarten online. It was,
no way,
yeah,
an
yeah,
actual
she
saint
teaches
she is.
kindergarten now. Pardon?
An actual saint she is
I
because
know, she
that
would
is
tell me the
on.
stories of trying to, like, break down, like, play centers online, and she's just like, "I don't even know." Like, I'm hoping they're educating, but it's like, it was such a figure it out as you go process, but and, like, the needs, obviously, so, like, I guess, yeah, what were the needs that you kinda saw shift?
So I kind of saw this shift more in a regression of just attention because
Mhm,
you faced a lot of, and I know this was in the high school, I'm sure more so, but a lot of the
mhm.
students wouldn't have their cameras on. And so you would be like, oh no, like, am I talking to anybody? Am I teaching the parents? Am I teaching am I teaching anyone right now? Because, I'm
Yeah,
doing my craft right now and no one is paying attention to
yes.
me. Um,
I know. I was teaching 'cause I was doing my practicums during COVID.
okay.
So, I've
Oh
only
boy.
been, like, kind of 4 years in, but I was, like, subbing while I wasn't in practicum, but in practicum, I remember specifically, like, for this example, I was teaching, grade 12 English, and we were playing the audiobook through Zoom with them, or Google Meet, whatever it
Yep.
was, and we asked there's 2 brothers in our class, I can't even remember their names now, actually, and we could tell, like, their cameras were off, and we asked them to turn them on, and they were, like, in their car, like, delivering food, and I was like, "This is the craziest thing I've ever seen." So, yeah, and especially as a practicum teacher, you're already, like everything is so heightened, like, the anxiety and, like, the anticipation is already so crazy, and then when, like, no one's listening to you on a camera, it's just not, it's not ideal.
No, not at all. Not ideal.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like the first challenge. So that was like the second challenge that we faced was teaching our older teachers how to use the technology through the technology. So it's not like
Yeah.
we were, sitting in a room together.
On
Like,
Google Meet, no.
no, I was like, okay, you hit this button, it looks like this. I'm going to send you a text message with what this looks like right now. So that was also challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the needs for the students, I feel like the attention was one of them. And then the reading
Mhm.
portion kind of went down. Um, it's no secret that we encourage parents to read with their children. Like that starts from a young age. Like
Mhm.
I don't remember being in the womb. I don't remember
Yep.
being a baby, but I do know that my parents read to. I'm a twin, So I read to my sister and I all the time. And it was very apparent if it was happening or not at home. And I get life happens, and you're kind of in that balance of like, your kids don't want to sit in front of a computer. The only time they want to
Mhm.
sit in front of a computer is if they're playing a video game. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of the regression in reading. And then it was on top of that, we saw the regression stem into like, when you're planning, you're like, is this even reaching my students? Because I'm very passionate about multisensory education and teaching how to read. And I was like, I can't really do too much of that without kind of putting together packages and sending it to my students for them to be able to do that at home. So I kind of saw a lot of just, you're teaching the parents how to teach, you're trying to engage the student through a platform that we never really thought we'd ever have to engage in other than being in college, like if we had a virtual class. So other than that, it was a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, and I even kind of, as you were, like, mentioning, like, I remember during COVID, everyone I mean, everyone kind of, like, in the news, whatever you'd hear, like, "Oh, we didn't realize how much these teachers were doing, like, they're saints, like, I can't believe they had to put up with, like, my kids, like, not knowing this all the time, etcetera." And now we're kind of, like, back to the, oh, kind of trashing teachers again, even though we're only, like, a year back into it, but, yeah, what do you mean by multisensory, like,
Ah,
reading instruction?
I love that question. So multisensory is kind of taking all of the ways that you learn. So auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, visual, and you are adapting your reading lessons to meet all of those different learners. So I use a
Mhm.
lot of manipulatives in teaching how to read, and it kind of goes into like the science of reading. So using science-based methods and methodologies to teach reading. And we've really seen like a growth through that. And I don't think that really was apparent until kind of COVID hit, and you're like, okay, we were doing this and they were making so many gains that I don't think we even realized. And then you kind of put them in a setting where they're not able to use that. And then you're like, okay, now I need to drive this home. Like, a lot of what I do is not paper pencil. So, like, I have a lot
Okay.
of boards where I use a lot of whiteboards. I use a lot of like dot markers. I've used Play-Doh before. I've used kinesthetic sand. There's just a lot of different ways of teaching students how to read instead of just having them sit there and just keep rereading. And the
Yeah.
memorization model is never a thing.
Mhm.
It's teaching them behind the scenes of what each sound says and that matching correspondence to a letter, and then the different versions of what that looks like. And that builds their vocabulary, because their letter vocabulary, because there's so many different, there's 44 phonemes, but 250 ways that we write those ways. But we didn't know
Yeah.
any of this going to college. We weren't taught this in college. It was an outside, actively participating and learning is how I kind of learned how to teach reading with fidelity. So it's been a
Yeah, 'cause
journey.
I remember I took a science of reading class in university, um, but literally, it's probably shameful of me to say, it was like a 3-hour online evening course once a week. I mean, bless the heart of my professor, but I was actually in a weird situation where I attended university 4 hours from where I live,
Mhm.
and so I would attend class in the morning in this place, drive back home 4 hours, and then attend my evening class at night online, and so maybe that was why I didn't quite get as much out of it, but, I guess, like, my point is, like, technically I took the course, like, I have the degree, but if you were to put me in, like, a situation where, like, "Okay, Lucas, you're gonna teach, um, like, special education grade 4. This student has a grade 1 reading level. Please teach it. Please catch them up," I guess. I'd be
Mhm.
like, phonemes, yes. Like, I just don't,
Sounds.
like, yeah.
Let's
How would you, I
re-sing the
guess, like
ABCs.
yes, like, we're just gonna sing all day, it's gonna be great. So I guess, like, and I don't mean to kinda put you on the spot or make you feel like I'm interviewing you or whatever, but, like, let's just say you get a like, a kid in grade 4, for example, like, 9 years old,
Yeah.
and they have that kind of kindergarten, grade 1 reading level, like, what's kind of your like, what's your initial approach? Like, how do you actually kind
Okay.
of
So
diagnose and
that's a
how do
great
you kind of
question because
progress?
I honestly, as a special education teacher, I teach so many different reading levels. And just because I'm
Mhm.
focused in fourth grade doesn't mean that I'm getting a fourth grade reader right off the bat.
Probably rarely that you do.
Rare, I mean,
Rarely that you do.
honestly, that's like
Yeah.
the last, and if they're fourth
Mhm.
grade coming to me, they're not with me for a specific learning disability that's geared towards their basic reading fluency. Um, so for
Mhm.
me, let's say it's the beginning of the year and I'm assessing my students, and I do see kind of like a lower, second grade type of reader. I do something called the core phonics. So it kind of assesses each different category of the different syllable types that we teach. So there's 6 syllable
Mhm.
types. You have closed syllable, so a short vowel. You have an open syllable, which is a long vowel. You have your magic E, which is at the end, makes its vowel say its name. You have your vowel teams. You have your bossy R controlled, and then you have your
Mhm.
consonant LE. So this allows me to kind of see where they are in that kind of continuum. And then a lot of my groups I break up because just because I'm fourth grade, I could have students that are in second grade with me
Mhm.
because of the way that our school kind of we assess them and put them where their level is. So I could have a group like right now I have a group that they are in a third grade reading level. So I teach them with a third grade, reading level passages, all of that, like what's based for them. And then I have readers right now that are in the morphology. So doing more of the vocabulary portion and breaking down Greek and Latin bases, prefixes, suffixes. So when I use something like a core phonics assessment allows me to kind of group them based on their need because it's not a one size fits all model.
No.
It
Yep.
allows you to put students with who is best for them, um, like student wise, because you're not always going to get everybody that's aligned. So if I have 2 students that are reading kind of first, second grade, I can group them together where I have that third grader that I can be able to instruct them at a different level. So not all my students are conjoined just because they're on my caseload. It, I have so many different groups coming to me inside and out, and that's kind of how I mentioned I become more of a self-contained teacher because I'm having to teach so many different reading groups that it's kind of and I love teaching reading. So for me, I don't
Yep.
mind it, but also I do miss the model of being able to support my students in the classroom. Whereas like
Yeah.
thankfully for my support staff is able to do that while I'm kind of confined. We call our classroom the armpit because when I tell you we are in the back of the building, and I luckily
Yeah.
teach with like one of my best friends. She's the third grade case manager, and we went to college together. We were pledge sisters, so they kind of like we always joke that they put us in the armpit on purpose.
Yeah.
You social butterflies go to the back of the school.
Yeah. Yeah, because
But
honestly, I feel like when I'm just like hearing you talk about this, like I'm picturing in my mind this like prestige, like posh room of like this like brand new school, but it's like for the most part, like we're all teaching these schools built in the 60s and 70s, and
oh
we're
yeah.
just trying to figure it out with like this one new computer in the back, and you're like, I don't really know.
Oh my gosh, considering the fact that like you would there are some schools that are kind of like the Sky High. Do you remember that like movie Sky High? It was like a
I
Disney
don't.
movie. Well, it's kind of like that crazy build where I'm like, that's not us. Like we have certain amount of classrooms and this is not looking our elementary does not look like a high school.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, how long have you been teaching for now?
6 years. So it's my sixth
6
year.
years? Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, one of the things that I'm hoping to kind of build in my repertoire, I guess, over the next kind of 3 to 4 years myself is, like, what are your, like, your favorite games to play? 'Cause I've seen some of your things, like, even in your link tree, like, specific games that you play with your kids to, like, help them kind of move these levels.
So like I said, very multisensory. So
Mhm.
my classroom floor is a game board. So
That's
we
cool.
took tape and we kind of mapped out the entire floor plan to look like an actual, like kind of like a Monopoly game board type deal. And so
Mhm.
we, with dry erase markers, like we constantly practice spelling and reading certain words where they can progress through the board. So the more you excite students, the more that they are willing to participate with you. And I've kind of learned from that model that that helps because you can sit there and give them a piece of paper all day, every day, and that's going to be boring to them, you know. And there are some games that are just so fun. Like I've made like game boards online and printed them. They love that. But getting them moving, there's something about being stimulating the body to be able to put that with teaching, and it really goes a long way. So I would say, like, I have a little mini basketball hoop in my classroom that we use multiple times where I'm like, okay, we're going to spell this word and we'll like count the different phonemes in it. And then they'll show me it. And I'm like, all right, crumble up that basketball. Time to, you know, it's March Madness. Let's shoot across the room. Like,
Yeah.
so you just, it's the way that you have to make it fun, not only for them, but you have to make it fun for yourself. How boring would that be if I wasn't engaged in what I was teaching? I don't want the 9 to 5. I don't want to sit behind a computer and just, you know, okay, like counting down. Like I know we're in the thick of it right now, but when you reflect back, like you are what the experience is. So if you want it to be a boring experience, then make it a boring one. But I became a teacher because of my fourth grade teacher. So you kind of think back to that. Um,
And, there's so much in what you just said there. Like, I'm like, recently, we just got, like, my wife and I just got our taxes done, like, these last couple weeks, and it
Best
was
time of year.
hilarious because, like, our tax person, I guess wouldn't even know the name of, like, the person who does it. Anyway, they were, telling me, they're like, "Oh, I used to be a teacher as well, but, like, I had to get out of it, but, like, now I just sit behind a computer all day and just, like, look at numbers," and I'm just like, I just don't know, like, I just can't ever picture myself, like, doing anything
Mhm.
else, but I almost find there's, like, a weird pressure from people, like, honestly, like, everything that you're telling me, I'm not just trying to gas you up, but, like, I really do admire your
Gas me
effort of
up.
trying to well, I'm just trying to
I'm
get,
s
like, finding the different ways, like, literally, I mean, you have the creative classroom, but, like, you're trying to actually find different ways because, usually people see, oh, if you see kids standing and playing a game in a room, they're not learning.
yeah,
Like,
no.
they're just wasting time and having fun. Like, this isn't what this is about. There's almost like that weird if you put in the extra effort, you're, like, ostracized in a different way.
Oh my gosh, you get so criticized. You're looked
Yeah.
at like you do too much. And like I can be
Yeah.
very bougie. Like let's be honest here. Like I can be a very they my friends used to call me Kabougie. Like my name's Cabrina. They used to call me Kabougie. Like I can be that way.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, look at me. I just came back from Miami. I'm so tan.
Alright.
You can strap
Yeah.
handlebars on me right now, and I'm a
Yeah.
handbag. Like this is
Yeah.
just where I'm at right now. But I don't like the stigma behind, you know, if you're finding things that work and they're fun and they take more time to do, I think about the child. Think about the experience you're causing for them because like it's going to come back to you in some form because they're excited about the lesson. Like even a simple bingo game that I make, and I like to try to make them per holiday or per like month,
Mhm.
and the kids love it and they know the routines, and all I'm doing is switching the concept that I'm teaching and they already know. So kind of going through that, I mean, yeah, it takes, am I doing it at school? No, I'm doing it at home, but I know
Mhm.
what the
Mhm.
value in that is, and I'll take that all day, every day.
Well, yeah, like, the extra I mean, it's hard to even put a number of hours, and it's not like we work 18 hours a day, like, I know I've seen some memes going around on Instagram about, like, the 18-hour-a-day teacher or whatever, but, like, when you do kind of put in that extra effort, like, I say to my wife sometimes, I'm like this is, like, my inner history, like, nerd coming out. Like, my ideal, like, afternoon is just, like so I have a bookshelf in my classroom that has all my old university notes from, like, every history course I took 'cause I teach social studies, and, like, scrolling back through my old notes is, like, a good afternoon for me, like, that's fun. Like, I see that as, like, genuine but people would see that, "Oh, like, you're doing 3 more hours of work," but it's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, maybe I am, but it's also, like, something that I enjoy doing, and then I'll bring up this random, like, fact or story that I forgot about, and I'll tell the kids and they love it. So it's like,
Right.
it actually does make your, I guess, 8 to 3:30 not feel like an 8 to 3:30. Like, you're kinda
Yeah,
actually just kinda going through your day, just enjoying yourself because the work's already kind of done for you.
for sure.
Um, but would you say that you've gotten, like, considerable backlash from, like, other teachers for what you've done? Or the
Um,
things that you do, I should say?
I will say I've gotten, through my platform and as it's grown more, because it kind of there was a big change. Like I started it over a year ago and I just like
Mhm,
significantly grew. And the main question that I've gotten is how do you do this in a day? Like how do you find the time? And like I tutor, like I'm just like everybody else. Like a majority of teachers have outside jobs. Like you don't just
yeah,
have your teaching job. Like I tutor. I also work with a woman. I work out with a woman that has special needs. She's 40. And like, but those
mhm,
are things that I enjoy doing.
mhm,
But I mean, I'm lucky and very fortunate that I've gotten more on the like, you're awesome. Like, what you do is great. But there are some teachers that are like, you do too much. Like, and I feel like as our platforms kind of grow, you kind of run into those people that say that. And
mhm,
I will say there was one comment on a post of mine that, and I 99% of the time get really great comments, like just very thankful,
yes.
whatever.
But the fact that this
It's
one,
so
yeah, you haven't even told me yet, but it's the fact that it stuck with you is like, yeah, go on.
it was somebody just mentioning, like, this is how you should have made this game. That didn't sit well with me. And I think, and I was like, you're going to tell me what to do. We love that. As teachers, we're told
Yeah,
what to do all the time. I
yeah,
was like, not in this space are you going to tell me what to do. Because I'm doing this because the end goal for me is I love teaching, but eventually I want to help teachers teach.
yeah,
So if that means me, I will eventually leave the classroom and I don't know what capacity that looks like right now, but I want
mhm,
to be able to help teachers just like I'm doing full time through my platform. Um,
mhm.
but there was a one comment that just I was like, I mean, I talked to my boyfriend about it probably 4 different times in like a half hour time frame. I'd walk away and I'd be like, "Can you believe that?"
You're just stewing the
I
entire
was like,
time.
I can't stop thinking about this right now." I was like, the audacity. I was just so
Yeah,
hurt by that. And then I was just like, I gotta sit back and think like that's now I'm laughing at myself of I was
yeah,
her comment. She won in that scenario because
yeah,
I have 50 other comments that are like, "Thank you so much. This is so awesome." But, we have to kind of build other teachers up. And I think that that's a big takeaway right now is instead of taking the time to be a troll and commenting on somebody's thing, something negative, whether it's an outfit of the day or something about their appearance, like when you get dressed up for school and you look nice, you're feeling good about yourself. So first and foremost, if
yeah,
you're going to knock a teacher for dressing up and looking nice, that's rude. Second of all, if
yeah,
you don't dress up and you don't look nice, that's okay too. Don't knock them for that either.
yeah.
So I think we just
I
need
know.
to build a more community of just being more accepting and like be everybody's hype girl, hype guy. Like, don't
Yeah.
be mean. Like, I don't know what the point of that is.
Everyone's, like, passive aggressive. Not
Yes.
everyone, but, like but I'll say, like, I
Good
'cause I
enough.
remember, like, my first year, I mean, I wore, like, the dress shirt every day and the dress pants, and, like, I was feeling good. Did I really know what I was doing in my classroom? Hopefully. I'm hoping I took something out of from what I was doing. But I've kind of, like, walked it back a little bit because, like, everyone every day would just be like, "Why are you so dressed up?" But I almost felt like a weird, "Okay, am I, like, trying to am I unwittingly trying to, like or not trying to, but am I unwittingly communicating that I'm, like, trying to position myself as, like, better than them?" Like, I didn't know, like, how to, like, handle that dynamic, but, like and not that I don't dress well now, I don't think, but it is a very weird kind of, like, pressure to just be like, "Here."
Mhm.
Like, don't like, as soon as you go here, it's like, "Whoa, why are you doing that? Like, what are you doing there?"
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that's I think you're right, like, the hype be everyone's hype man or hype girl, I think is probably the way everyone should be, and I don't know why. Because it was actually not too long ago that someone, like, openly criticized me to my face in front of the staff. Not at my school, but it was a whole thing, and it was just very unsettling because it was just
Yeah.
like, "Why are we doing this? Why are we just openly going against other people for, like, trying to do things?" But I don't know. I mean, I talked to a guy named Gasper, and he's like, "You know what? There's always gonna be assholes in life. Like, you just
Oh
gotta
my god,
figure it
he is
out
the
and just, like,
funniest
you"
person ever. Oh my god, he's
He
hilarious. He really is. Like, he cracks me
he's
up all
just
the time.
yeah, he's just so dry. He's like, "You know what?
He
There's always
is.
gonna be assholes. Just figure it out. Keep doing
Yeah,
your thing." I'm like, "I love that." But
it's
but I
true.
guess, like but we talk about, like, again, putting in the extra effort. I mean, you talk about having, like, the extra jobs. Like, even I, like, ref sports
Yeah.
outside of school. Like, that's kind of my, I guess, like, side income or whatever you wanna call it. Um, but, like, why would you encourage someone to go into teaching today?
Got to think about this answer for a second.
I know, but, like, but again, to me, it was always like I remember the day I figured out I wanted to go into teaching. I was 18 years old, like in high school, and I was like, you know what? The fact that I can make like a living teaching history and like social studies, and that could be my career, like I just never looked back. But and then
Right.
you get into education, and everyone's just not even self-deprecating, but self-defecating, like on everyone, and I'm just like, I don't. What is happening here?
I think that for me, so I went into teaching because I already knew at a very young age I wanted to teach. Between my fourth grade teacher being absolutely incredible to
Mhm.
I wanted to be a special education teacher because my cousin has autism. He has really
Okay.
defied the odds. Literally is one of the smartest people I know, and he is a full functioning adult, and he's amazing. He has done so many incredible things, and I can't wait. I mean, he's so young, like he's only 23, and I'm like, you are going to do so many other things in your lifetime. So that's kind of where I started. And I was like, I know immediately I want to give back. And I want to be able to, because our small wins with our students means so much, not only to the student, to the families. Because accepting of special education in general, I've been in meetings, I've talked to families that it's a lot to kind of, assess and accept, reality sometimes. And so that's why I wanted to go into special education, to make a difference at the end of the day, to destruct the stigma, to show that these are individuals and these are extraordinary human beings. And, sometimes, actually, majority of the time, if not all the time, I phrase to my students that any of their disability is their superpower, because it makes them different. Because who would want to be the same person? Who wants to fit, everybody's very uniform? That's not fun.
Mhm.
That doesn't make a staple in history. You don't get remembered. You get
Yeah,
remembered by
being
standing out
mid,
and being
as,
you.
my kids would say.
Yeah, seriously. But if I could tell somebody right now to go into the profession, I'm with you on the workload is a lot.
Mhm,
Um, I'm gonna preach what everybody says. There's not enough time in the day. There really
mhm.
isn't, because, every day is different, and it is a blessing if my day goes to plan with what I wanted to happen, but that just comes with the territory. I, like, can't even name,
Yeah,
like, probably a week straight of that everything went exactly how it was supposed to. But
mm,
there's beauty in that, because you have people, like we said, that go to a 9 to 5 and they just sit there and they know what to expect, and they're pretty much just sitting there waiting for the next day to happen. Like, what a boring life. And we get to sit there and be like, we don't know what's about to happen, actually, and we're just going to take it in strides, and it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. A behavior from a student is not going to make me throw in the towel in that very moment. It might hurt my feelings, and I might cry about it, because I feel like defeated. Like, there's like a defeated stigma behind
Yeah,
it. Like, you just feel like you're not doing enough when you're doing so much more than you think you are. Go into the profession, because you will make a difference, because you
yeah.
are going to impact a student whether you realize it or not. My first year students are now freshmen in high school. And we still have students come back with their siblings and are like, I want to come visit you. Like, you were so great. And that's so nice to know that they want to come back and see you because you made such a difference in their life. And yes, we might have those parents that make it kind of tough at times,
Mhm.
but that's like small. You don't deal with that every single day. You don't have your entire caseload being a parent that, might kind of push you a little bit over the edge.
If
But
anything, there's always just, like, one that kind of just,
ugh,
like,
there's always
is
one.
lingers a little bit too much. Just a
There's
little
always
bit too much.
there's there's definitely always one. I've been in scenarios
Yeah.
with advocates, like against advocates. I've been through it all. And if I reflecting back, if I hadn't gone through those situations, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't feel like I have some type of voice to give to other teachers where they can learn from what I do or have done. And at the end of the day, it's if some
S
one person takes away from what I have to say, then good, that's a win.
so what do you mean by sorry, you said you're going speaking against advocates? Is that the expression you
So
just used? What do you mean by that?
So an advocate is someone that a family can hire to kind of, if they don't agree with certain things, that either it's an implementation of a service you're providing or they feel more minutes need to be met, they can hire a educational lawyer advocate to kind of sit in meetings. They become very formal. It's like going with a lawyer. Um, it's very
I've
overwhelming.
never heard of this.
It's very overwhelming. And you don't hear it from most general education teachers, you'll hear it from special education teachers. And I've gone up against one, and I'm not really allowed to talk too much about it, but I will
No,
say
no, no, yeah. Yeah.
that I got teacher of the year that year. So, let me tell you, when she gave
So
me that award,
mhm.
it just made my life even more because of the fact that I worked day in, day out, because my heart was with the child. Like, it was never not with the child. The child was making the
Yeah.
progress. I had the data to prove it. It just not everybody's gonna like you.
So, and, please, like, if I'm prying too much here, like, please don't feel like you need to say anything, obviously. But, like, what would, I guess, cause the jump from, like, a parent maybe disagreeing to, like,
Mhm.
seeking an advocate, just in general? Because I've never even heard of this before, so I'm actually
Um,
genuinely curious.
yeah. So honestly, that was mine had come from a years prior. So they can follow as they get older each year. So
Okay.
like as case
So they
managers,
already had one?
they already had one.
Okay.
So you just kind of know it's coming your way and you try to make the best of the situation. But again, not everybody's going to agree um, with, your perspective and your professional input. And, that's okay. But it can be a lot. Like it made me question myself as an individual. It made me
Mhm.
question, am I not doing enough? Like what's going on here? Like I have everything to show for what I'm doing. Like I'm very confused here. But it was a monumental learning curve that was only beneficial. And I will say, like, I'm not saying I'm like amazing or anything, or like,
Well,
this
that's
leads
an
me to
intense circumstance to,
it
like,
was. I mean, it
reflect
was.
from,
It was,
obviously,
and
yeah.
I was 20, so I went it was a 2-year stint of time. Yeah. So, yeah. Um,
Wow.
yeah. But,
Yes.
yeah, all I could say is, yeah. I it was hard. I mean, I was like, "I'm ready to run for the hills." Like, I can't believe I'm doing that. Like, I can't believe I'm being put in this situation. But the harder that I worked and the more that I didn't internalize or take it personally, you have to be able to take yourself out of the situation. And honestly, that never really is the typical case where it's to that extent. I just happened to be in a scenario where it just wasn't great.
Mm,
Whereas I've gone with in meetings with other advocates that have been wonderful because the main goal is for them to get what the child needs. And if there's something that needs to be
yeah,
extra, then let's do it. It's for the child.
like, they're not
But
supposed to be an adversary. It's supposed to
right,
be literally you're advocating, not,
right,
like, going
right.
against, right?
Right. And I think sometimes it's really hard to compartmentalize the fact that you're with these students day in, day out, and you see them the longest during the day. And then someone that doesn't know them is telling you what either you're not doing or what you should be doing. And that's just hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. So,
And so if you don't, like, how was your like, were you just kind of in these meetings by yourself? Like, did you have admin
no,
with you? Like, what
no,
was
we have
the
administration, and there's like a whole lineup of people that have to be in the meetings with you. Um, but yeah, it's very intimidating. It's a very intimidating and taxing situation. And honestly, I
I
felt
promise I'm
like
not laughing at you. I'm just,
no,
like,
it's
I'm,
it's
like,
it's
almost in shock
mind-blowing.
here.
It's
Like, this is
mind-blowing. And I honestly didn't know that those scenarios presented themselves until being in it. Like, I never knew about that in college. I never knew
No.
about a lot of things that teachers face on a normal basis. You don't learn it
Mhm.
because it's more of like a newer thing, I feel like, in terms of like
Mhm.
what we face on a day-to-day basis that are not it's not the most glorified, time all the time.
Yeah,
So,
and it's, like, really I'm trying to think of yeah, 'cause I've like I said, I mentioned to you before, I've never taught any sort of special education programming before, and, like, I even remember I think it's again, I think it's always with the best intention, but I did take, like, an inclusive education class when I was in university. It was a spring course, and it was only, like, 4 weeks, which is kind of insane that that's your training, I guess,
mhm.
for inclusive ed is like a month in the
Mhm.
spring. Um, but like it was almost like a full month of, and rightfully so, like we're looking for ways to not literally exclude them, and like they're showing the benefits of having them in like a neurotypical classroom, etc. But to actually, like, I always kind of laugh at the word strategies because I don't actually know what that means in terms of like people are like, oh, like what are your strategies for this? And I'm like we're just kind of like we're like what do you mean by strategies? Like we're are you looking at like methods? Like what does that actually mean? But in terms of like what I was taught, I guess, in a sense of how to actually help them, not just kind of the theoretical foundation of why they should be included. I found that was like the big gap for me. And so I guess I'm saying, like, if I had to go into my first or second year, then all of a sudden there's an educational advocate, like not targeting me, but kind of literally like if you're in a heated scenario, I'm like, I'm honestly just trying to figure this out as I'm going as well. Like
Right.
I would find that a very like difficult scenario because our running joke, and I say our as like the entire profession, like the ed degree doesn't really teach you that much outs like in terms of how to actually handle these practical scenarios. So sorry, yeah, that kind of just blew my mind. But
Yeah, no, and I feel like not many people know that that's the scenario, and it's not typical, like, it doesn't happen all the time.
no, no.
Um, but, it can, and I do think that it needs to be something that's brought up, that you can, face exterior, teachers or participants in meetings in certain circumstances, and how, again, you're not taught those things. You're not taught a lot of things. I learn a lot as a special education teacher through my first year. And, yes, were we taught how to write an IEP? We were, but not to the degree
I
like
wasn't
I
even taught that.
right. And for me, like
Yeah.
I honestly, like I will say I write very great individual education plans. Like I have
Mhm,
become that's like my craft. Like I'm
mhm,
very good at, the paper side and working
mhm,
as well as I am on the implementation side, but that came with a lot of practice.
mhm,
And if I could compare the first IEP I wrote in 2018 to the one that I wrote like the other day, it's two different teachers. And
mhm,
you are not going to be the same teacher that you came in as a starting teacher, and that's the beauty of it. And you want
mhm,
to leave the profession as a better version of yourself. So hold on to that, and that should just drive you throughout, your educational career. And I feel like sometimes we're so afraid of we didn't get this done. There's not enough time. I'm so like burnt out all of the time that I feel like
mhm.
sometimes we don't get to reflect on the little wins of the day. And that just
Yeah.
goes back to like hyping each other up. Like we really do need to hype each other up. And that's where these platforms have really come into play, where there needs to be more experiences shared. That's why I think your podcast is stellar, because of the fact that
Well, thank you.
you're sharing like other teachers from all different areas that have experience. You just learned something new about an educational advocate. Like,
Yeah,
not
I
many
got
people know about that. Not many
yeah.
people know about those scenarios.
Mhm.
So, you know, we just gotta do it together.
Yeah, and so I guess my question then would be like, because even I had a like a partner teacher, I guess teacher bestie Hillary Morgan, big shout out. She was like she did her master's of inclusive education, and honestly, like I would write up my individual program plans. I'm like, they were all right, and I'd go look at hers, and I'm just like. She's like, "Oh, I utilize data-driven assessment." And I'm just like, "Whoa, like this is like some high-level vocab here that I've just like not. I'm just it's literally a different world, I think."
Yeah,
Um, but so let's just say, Professor Lafonte, you are teaching like these second year education students a semester course. I guess like what kind of like core? Because again, you even in 6 years, you can't teach everything in a semester. So I guess
right.
how would you try to like kind of retailor some of these programs? And again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
No,
like,
no, that's
what are some
okay.
things that are like are crucial to kind of
So
what you would provide?
some things that I would kind of include, like let's say I did like a snapshot. My courses as a university teacher would be to teach,
Mhm,
special education view in the life, of a 6-week course.
Mhm.
I would teach how to write an IEP and what's
Mhm.
so important about it. The data behind what you're tracking is what is going to provide your justification for what you're doing. So,
Mhm.
as a special education teacher, they didn't really say, data is very important. Like, this is how you track it. They just said, okay, data is important. Like, make sure you do X, Y, and Z, but they never went
Yeah.
explicitly into how you track it. I learned that as I was going through being an actual teacher. So that would be kind of like something I would teach. Another section of what I would teach would be the co-teaching or how to get along with your colleagues. What does scheduling look like? You aren't taught scheduling. We, as special ed teachers, we have to collaborate with so many different teachers, and to be able to figure out what works best for your schedule to make sure that you're able to, because you are by law held to meeting, minutes. And so your availability is key, and where you put yourself in the day-to-day routine is important. So, how to best schedule yourself throughout the day where you're able to get a lunch. Because let's be honest, some people don't eat lunch at school, because I'm guilty of it. I was really good at the beginning of the year of don't eat through lunch. Do not work through lunch. Do not work through lunch. I work through lunch all the time. But I want to be able to tell teachers, this is how you map out your day. This is how you schedule things so you can have a life and
Mhm.
teach. Teaching doesn't have to be your life. It is our life to our core because it's what drives us every day. And,
Mhm.
we think about our kids when we wake up, we think about them before, we go to bed because of what do we need to do for them the next day. Like we know that that's a thing. But to be able to teach, okay, the IEP plan, this is what I need you to teach. What works best for certain students with different disabilities. Um,
Mhm.
to also teach scheduling, to teach the little things like educational advocates and people that come into the picture that you aren't ever taught. So I think I would do more
Mhm.
of like a snapshot of what you could face in a year.
Yeah, because I remember even the college thing is real, especially if you're like in elementary, where there's more often the case where you're like pulling kids out specifically, like
Mhm.
throughout the day, because like you're always, again, not in like a with a negative connotation, but you're always like pulling kids out of the class. So like
We
the
are.
teacher will have a plan, and then it's like, oh,
We
like
are.
I was gonna teach them this today, but it's like trying to have a mutual understanding. And I think that's usually like it doesn't need to be that you're butting heads and you're like
Mm-mm.
competing for the kids' time. It's like no, like we're both again, we're advocates, not adversaries here,
Right.
in kind of what we're actually trying to do. But I remember even like as a specific example that I remember was for like reading fluency. It was like what and like when you have a passage for reading, it's like how many mistakes do you make and like how fast is it like does it take you 45 seconds or does it take you 65? Is that kind of like the data driven part that you're kind of referring to that you actually like see in real time?
Oh yeah, like I'm tracking correct words per minute. So how many words was my student able to read on a grade level passage or on an instructional
Mhm.
level passage? First and foremost, I didn't know what the word decoding meant to save my life. I was like, what does decode mean? I was like, what is that goal? I was like, oh,
Wait,
that's
don't
reading.
tell me, don't tell me.
Oh,
Decoding. Would this be like finding like the sounds and like the prefix and suffix? Like
so
I'm
like
gonna put
an
myself on the
example,
spot here. I don't actually know.
so like a goal for like decoding, the student I mean, this is
I
good.
mean, yeah, I know decoding. It's like my favorite thing ever.
I love to decode till I die. But like a goal would be the student will be able to decode um the list of words with 90% accuracy in 4 out of 5 trials. That means a student
Okay.
will be able to correctly read this word list. So read the word, an isolated word.
Mhm.
It's just a fancy word for read, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because on the
Yeah.
opposite side, you have encoding. So you have encoding, which is writing or spelling, and then you have decoding, which is reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Um,
love the fancy vernacular. It's my
Oh, right?
favorite.
I mean, I feel fancy when I say it. I'm like, "Look at me go." Like, I'm teaching him what decode and encode means.
We're gonna decode all week.
Decoding all day. That's
I'm actually gonna call my readings decoding sessions now with my grade 12s. They'll love that. But so like 6 years now. Like, have you done a master's specifically
Yeah.
for yourself? Like, or have you started one? Like, okay, yeah.
So
Like,
I
what did
did
you kind of do your master's in? Like, what did you choose?
so my undergrad was elementary education, and
Hmm.
then my master's is in special education.
Okay.
So and they were kind of, a program where it was a year and a half, so I kind of had a unique situation where,
Mhm.
I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not great at math. It just wasn't my strong suit. Like, I love teaching reading. I can write a paper in 30 minutes, and it could be, like, 10 pages
Yeah.
long. Like, I that was my strong suit.
Yeah.
Math was not great, so I
Mhm.
couldn't pass the praxis in college for math on time. So I couldn't graduate with my license. So I had to do a portion where I had to do the master's to be able to get the license portion, which I was going to go and get my master's anyway. So it kind of was the
Mhm.
best of both worlds. So I technically was in college for 6 years between undergrad
Yeah.
and graduate level. And honestly, again, this is going to be bad to say. I think master's is very important. I put a lot of work into it. However, in the teaching profession, it's no secret that we don't get paid, that much.
Yeah.
And so it's that leg up of we get a boost in our salaries because of having our masters. And I think that a lot of what we learn is in the classroom, what you're doing, how you're
Yeah.
doing things, learning from other teachers. So, do I think everybody needs a master's? No. However, I do say that if they, which they are starting to do, I think that being able to be taught how to like teach reading, if I
Yeah.
could go back and do a master's in that right now, I would, because I had to learn on the fly. And luckily, like through programs like IMSC taught me multisensory learning. So I'm trained in that for
Mhm.
Orton Gillingham. I'm in the letters program right now. So it's a graduate level course that my county offers for teachers to take. So
Mhm.
I'm always trying to, get better. Like you never stop learning. Even as a teacher, you're looked at
No.
like, everything. We don't know everything. I
Well,
want to
it's
keep
like
people learning.
boring if you decide to. I think
Yeah.
you won't like teaching if you don't want to be like experimental and
Yeah.
trying to like you're always kind of failing,
Yeah.
really. Like you're all no, I guess maybe that's the wrong way of saying it, but it's like you're always trying to see where you're wrong, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
people they don't like that. Like they think like, I have my 9 to 5 job. I know how to do it. I just want to show up and do my job, which is fair. I say to everyone, I'm like, you know what? This like teacher life of just constantly reflecting and trying. And again, like you like that's not even to say the behavior class size, all the kind of classic issues with education as from like a systemic level. But like a lot of people don't like that kind of microscope on like
No.
their own kind of psyche, I guess, all the time. But
I
yeah,
say bring it on, honestly. If someone's gonna sit there and critique everything I'm gonna do, then I'm gonna show you 10 times more why I'm good at what I do. And if I
yeah,
fail, I appreciate that process. Like, always
yeah,
appreciate the process. I have failed so many times, but I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't failed. Like, I'll cap
yeah.
off. You kind of
Yeah,
cap
I know.
yourself.
My thing is like I'm again, maybe this is a humble brag, I don't know. But I'm always like, please tell me where I'm wrong. Like please
Yeah.
tell me where I'm like not doing something or like you have this life-changing activity that you do that I don't. Like please. Like I don't know. I feel like you need to kind of just be generally okay with that.
No, I
Because I thought it
definitely
was
agree.
funny because I live in Alberta, Canada. I've been referred to as international recently. It was very nice. But we don't like, they don't pay extra for our masters here, which is weird
Oh, no way.
in Alberta. Yeah, and like some provinces in Canada do, but like it's just based on like years of education and like that kind of grid. But anyway, I don't want to bore you with the details on that, but I think like it is interesting and very strange, like how different the pay structure or like way that things kind of go in like every single state and every single province and like even in different cities. I'm like, this is just so odd. There's a couple more things before we kind of wrap up for the day. I remember we were talking before about your that you can't hang on your spring break.
No.
So I guess like what is like the most exhausting part about teaching and like how has it kind of changed your social life? 'Cause I find this one like, yeah, very interesting to explore.
So I have an issue anyway. When I sit on the couch, I fall asleep. I don't know if that's like a problem, but I like sit down and I'm out cold within like 10 minutes. Like it's really bad.
Yeah.
Someone could be talking to me and I'm out cold. Um, I think the most exhausting part of teaching right now is you're always trying to fix everything. So it's like this other
Mhm.
layer of just your subconscious, like kind of like not even mocking you, but just like constantly giving you a to do list. And it's like
Yeah.
teachers love to do lists. And I think I write 50 a day, but it's kind of
Mhm.
exhausting to kind of always look to what I have to do next. And then that's the most
Yeah.
exhausting. Or saying, okay, you need to get this done, but also we're going to throw X, Y, and Z on your plate, but they all need to be done at this very moment. And I think that's kind of increased more often in the last couple years of the expectations where there's a lack of time for that
Mhm.
um, to actually get it done with fidelity.
So how
So
would you define like like expectations have changed like for you in your context?
the expectations have changed because when you are a good teacher, you get more put on your plate. When you are not a good teacher or you are kind of doing the bare minimum, like you're very checked out, you're not kind of bothered. And I feel like my expectations have changed because I'm good at what I do. So
Mhm.
I kind of am doing more. I have a really hard time saying no. Like, genuinely, I have a hard time saying no when
Yeah.
I'm asked to do something or, "Hey, can
Mhm.
you actually come speak at our PD?" Or, "Hey, can you, help this person write X, Y, and Z's IEP?" Or, "Hey, you got 3 more teach or kids added to your caseload, but we need all of their initial IEPs due within a 30-day window." So I think the expectation has grown where there's lack of staff available. And I think that's
Yeah.
a nationwide thing. I think that's a
Yes.
worldwide thing.
Which is
And I
also crazy, but yeah.
yeah, and I just I don't know where that changed because reflecting back 6 years ago, that was not the case. I don't remember being or feeling levels of stress like we feel them right now, and I just I I laugh at my hardest day 6 years ago. Like, I laugh at that because I'm like, "That was a cakewalk." Like, that was easy to get through, and now I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like, usually people are counting down to their job being over. I'm like, "I need 3 more
Yeah.
hours to get everything I need to get done." And I'm like, "We're gonna be here till 8 p.m."
Yeah, and then, a student will walk in and be like, "Mr. Clark, you haven't marked this assignment yet," and I'm like, "I'm getting there, I promise, I'm sorry." Like,
Or you
I'm
do the,
trying so hard. Um
"Yes, thank you, I haven't said that
Mhm.
yet." So
Yeah, it's like,
funny.
I'll get to it over the weekend." It's
Yeah,
like,
like,
well, I don't know." But,
"Oh, no."
that is true. It's like the efficiency doesn't make you work less, it just gives you
Nope,
more tasks to do.
it does.
It's not really which I
It's a
think I
weird
don't know,
it's a
is that
weird
every
balance.
job? Is that
It's
every job though? I
weird.
was trying to think like the problems in education or like the things that we see as like educational issues, are those just like life things? Like as you like who
I
you
don't
are as
know.
like a worker or as a person? 'Cause, yeah, this has been my whole life. It's just been like
Yeah,
history, social
I've only been a
studies, teaching
teacher.
social.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
don't know, like, is that, what is asked of everybody all the time? And I feel like sometimes it's kind of an internal battle because I'm like, I don't wanna complain. Like, I don't wanna come off as I'm complaining or, you
Mhm.
know but if you don't speak up, things aren't gonna change. And I think
Yeah.
that, you know, I see it so much more often. Like, people posting
Mhm.
on their stories of their expectations. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, that's I feel that same way and it just in different states. And you're like, "I didn't
Yeah.
realize I was gonna I feel the same way someone else does."
Mhm. 'Cause I do think there's like I think the new expectation is like you're not gonna teach my kid, you're gonna fix my kid. Which is like a very weird and it's almost like we are going to hopefully like move them like 1 or 2% in more of a positive direction. Like that's pretty like we are one of their teachers at one time in their life. Hopefully having 40 great teachers is going to move them 40%, you know what I
Right?
mean? That's kind of the goal, but it's like there's almost this and maybe it is like a short-term gratification thing. Like we're kind of used to having everything like all like faster now. I don't know
Mhm.
if maybe they kind of expect that with like teachers and education. It's like like they're not going to become this kind of expert student overnight. But again, that's another podcast for another day of the current norms. But
I'm so here for
um,
it.
yeah, so two more questions to ask you for
Yeah.
today. Um, First one would be, if you had 1 minute and everyone in the world was listening to you, and you could change anything you wanted about education, and they would listen, what would you say?
Sorry, you phased out for a second. What did you
Oh,
say?
sorry. Yeah, no worries. So it's like if you had 1 minute and everyone in the world was listening, and you could change whatever you wanted about education, what would you say? And they had to listen.
Okay. If I had 1 minute to change
Yeah.
something in education, it
Yes.
would be just the respect of teachers. If we could have parents, supervisors, anybody shadow us for a day, you would understand that what we do. And I feel like there is kind of a stigma behind us. So if you could just see what we do in a day, I think your perspective would change on us. And if I could change anything, yeah, the money thing is, it is what it is. Parents need to understand that just because coming from a special education perspective, a disability for your child is their superpower. That means that they're different. So they're going to learn different and accept that process. There's beauty within that, and that's
Mhm.
okay. And it's okay to be different. And it's not going to be
Mhm.
the end of the world because you have people like us that want to help you, want to see the child succeed. So just know at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you are going to be okay.
Beautiful. Okay, I got one more, and if people are listening all the time, they're probably annoyed with me asking this question by now, but I love it, so I don't care. It's education is what remains once we forget everything that we learned in school. What is it that you want your students to take away from their time with you specifically, other than just kind of like the curriculum and the educational stuff?
So I actually had a student tell me the other day, which I'm a very emotional person. So like someone could look at me and just be like, oh my gosh, and I'd start crying. Um, but I had a student the other day come into me and she came in because I read a lot of my students' tests out loud to them. So she was waiting on the other students to come down and she was like, Miss Lafonte, I want to be a teacher just like you. And I go, oh, why? Like, I'm just very interested to know what you're about to say. And she was like, you told me from the very first day that my superpower is what makes me different. So she's dyslexic, and the way that her brain processes, the way she learns is different. And I was like, that's your superpower. And she was like, I want to accept kids like me and know that I'm going to be okay. And I was like, that's what I want them to take away. That at the end of the day, that someone cares about them and that I am going to support them and that I want them to be their best selves. So I'm always telling my kids that I want you to be your most successful self. And any way I can help you do that, I'm going to do it. Whether that's me showing up, I love going to sporting events for my students or
Yeah.
extracurriculars. Um, I coach cheerleading at school with one of my best friends, like giving back to the students and not just seeing me teaching them, but seeing me actually be a human being
Mhm.
is kind of how I
Yeah,
want them to remember me.
I think that's the big thing. Actually, one of the don't worry, we will be doing this again one day. Like one of the things was like the difference of kind of like your personal self and like your teacher self and how they differ. Like I always think it's very strange when there's like this like multi persona. Like I don't have the energy to be two different people. Like I only
Mm-mm.
have the energy to be myself. So I was like trying to have like a weird, strict like teacher version. I don't know. That's just not really my persona. And I think like seeing the kids out in public, I think is um a very good way to
And it
make
builds
us seem like real
relationships.
humans.
Yeah.
100%.
Builds the relationship
Yeah.
with the family. Like that's relationships right from the get go are important to establish with parents and with the students. So if I'm like, I'm going to be really hard on them and I'm just not going to communicate, like, why would they trust me? If they can't trust me, then
Absolutely.
we're going to go nowhere. So when we do have a hard conversation or a conversation that isn't something that's, roses and butterflies, that you respect my decision to help your student or something that I'm saying, like whether I'm doing a report on a behavior that I'm seeing or telling them not so good news that they are more accepting to that because I took the time to get to know them beforehand. I like to send out
Mhm.
emails every other week, so that there's no, gray area. Like, celebrate the wins, whether they're small, whether they're large, because if you're just going to be the teacher that fires off an email or a phone call every time something's wrong, that causes so much anxiety for parents, and that's not fun for anybody. And then there's a
Yeah.
stigma behind that.
Well, 'cause I was even, like, wondering earlier because when you're talking about, like, when we kind of the thought experiment of, like, a course snapshot, because what would you like, how would you teach people how to build relationships with their colleagues? Like, what is that like, how do you actually, like, 'cause I do find, like, I'm a generally social person, and, like, I find, like, I'm decently, like, easy to get along with, but in terms of, like, how do you actually like, what would you teach people how to, like, build quality relationships with other educators in education?
So, how would I teach that to other teachers?
Yeah, like, it's, like, one of the things we talked about of, like, even, like, the course, it's, like, trying to like, for example, we talked about the kids being pulled out
Mhm.
and, like, that kind of, like, advocate, not adversary. What would be like, how would you kind of advise to approach that?
I think you need to get to know who you're working with. So, whether that's outside of school, whether that's inside of school, I think that you need to make an active effort to understand everybody's personality because not
Mhm,
everyone's going to be just like you. I have people on my team that are
mhm,
so opposite of me, and that's something to celebrate because when we come together, we're able to like move mountains. So, my advice would
mhm,
be you need to get to know your team so you're able to have those conversations at the beginning of the year, such as scheduling. So when I do pull, it's not where I'm trying to be annoying. I'm pulling because they
mhm,
need this and that they're more accepting or flexibility wise. So when they need to shift something around for the day, it's not some like disaster for me to kind of clean up later. So I think that
mhm,
initially getting to know who you're working with goes a really long way. And whether that's you, because like our team likes to do things like around the holidays or around certain times of the year where we kind of hang out outside of school, and that's brought our team even closer. So I would just advise that get to know who you're working with. Go to the teachers also that you don't ever see. So like I'm in the fourth grade hallway, I never see K through 2 ever.
The 4th grade hallway is too real.
I mean, honestly, there was
Yeah.
our one of the teachers asked, they were like, "I didn't know you were still here." I was like, "What do you mean?"
It's like, "I'm just in the armpit living my life, like, don't worry, I'm still here."
Literally living my best life in the armpit with my best friend. Like they just, we're just over there. But I'm like, that's a problem. Like I need to maybe go down there more often and kind of just like
Mhm.
pop into teachers'
Yeah,
rooms, say hi. Don't just keep
yeah.
walking because you have one thing to do or like so many different things to do. Say hi to everybody. There was
Yeah, 'cause
around Christmas time, we did the Grinch game. So I'm on social committee. Like I am a pretty loud personality.
oh, yeah.
You're gonna like me, you're not gonna like me. It is what it is. So we did
Yeah.
like the Grinch game where we printed out Grinches and we passed them out to like staff members, and you had to actually communicate with staff members throughout the day. Like, and I have never seen so many staff throughout the day as we did trying to get each other's Grinches for the prizes. And I'm like,
So,
that's what it
yeah,
should be
how did
like
this
all
work?
the day. So basically, I passed out 6 Grinches to everybody in our school. So it was random staff. You could be support staff, you could be administrators, you could be in the
Yeah, and how many
cafeteria.
staff do you guys have on
We
average?
have 48, 48.
Okay, yeah.
So as you pass by in the hallway, you say, "Do you have a Grinch?" And they had to give it to you. So people were actively making an effort to talk to every single person that they came across in the normal school day, where half of us, unfortunately, put your head down and you're walking as fast as you can to get from point A to point
Yeah.
B, or you need like 5 seconds to yourself, where that kind of opened up. Oh my gosh, that was so fun. And the amount of emails that rolled in about that was so fun. So we've tried to do it every other month of something like that to kind of build more of a community because there's so many things that go on in the school day. You don't get to actually be present with your staff.
How would you win the Grinch game?
You have to have all the
Like,
like as many Grinches, like the most Grinches you have, you win. So like there
so
was
do
a
you get
teacher.
all
I mean,
6?
I when I posted it on Instagram, the amount of people that were like, our staff banned the game because people were so angry at I was like, I can't imagine that because we were laughing at each other the entire time. But I was like, it actually can stir up some stuff.
Honestly, I think like we had this image of the teachers of these like cooperative beings of light, but I
No,
feel like the competitive
competitive.
fire will still come out.
Oh my
Like,
God. Oh yeah. Very competitive.
oh
And
yeah,
those that are quiet are not quiet. It's misleading.
no,
Misleading. Misleading.
always misleading. All right, well, this was great. I very much appreciate you coming on today, Cabrina. We will definitely do this again. Um, yeah, all I have to say is thank you.
No, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
All right. I will see you soon.